Good morning, LinkedIn. Welcome to Let's Build Daily. I'm your host, Chris Carolan, joined today by a special guest, Cameron Collins. What's up, sir?
Hey, hey, so lovely to be here. Always love getting to interact and engage with the Sprocketeer community.
And it's fun to talk about the Sprocketeer community too. It's been really cool to watch it grow. Yesterday, I noticed it was at 1597. Today, I checked for the post and saw it was at 1603. So a little over 4x in 6 months. Pretty crazy, man.
I know. I wish I could take all the credit, but I have a feeling that having Kyle and Deanna and some of the other rock stars in our group definitely has an impact as well.
Yeah, and we'll get into kind of all the factors involved, but it definitely helps when you have the main HubSpot brand evangelist sending people to the community on a weekly basis. Um, but that's what building community is all about, and I think there's something special going on here. So I really wanted to take a minute to, you know, chat with you about what you've seen, maybe before Slack and after Slack, um, and kind of just dig in, like why, you know, I think it's appropriate to call it, something special going on over there. Sound good?
Yeah, I'm really, really excited to dig in. I love, I love talking about the community.
Yeah, and I love like looking for data points like this that kind of uh, denote that there is a bigger picture, right? And I think the growth of this community is very indicative of what's happening, in HubSpot right now, as far as just an explosion of activity and users and customers and partners and just all this stuff. And I meet everybody I meet who's not in Sprocketeer. I give them a link, and nobody has yet to not click the link. So it's something needed, I'm pretty sure, given the state of change in the ecosystem. But just people helping people in there, and it's a beautiful thing to be a part of.
Yeah, it really is, and I mean that's part of why I get so excited about just being able to be involved because when I was a new admin, I felt very alone trying to figure out how am I using this software. And then I found Sprocketeer and started just chatting with a lot of the users and everyone was so willing to help. And so I think it's a good reminder that although HubSpot is moving up market and you have larger companies that are starting to adopt the platform, we're still all just a group of people who are passionate about our jobs, passionate about HubSpot, and are excited to help one another, regardless of the size and scale of the company we're with.
Yeah, I think it's really cool, like especially if you're a partner and you can kind of let your guard down for a second. And I think remember the fact that in general, and I'd be surprised if there's a partner who can't agree with this in principle, but like the more people using HubSpot, the more people successful with HubSpot, uh, the more everybody wins, right?
I mean that's definitely true, and I know that on one hand, every company is looking for their growth, which absolutely understand that. But on the other hand, everyone's been saying the rising tide raises all the boats. And I think that regardless of which company, which partner you're with, or if you're not even with a partner, I think we can all agree that as the tide has risen, so have the boats.
Yeah. And I think like before we get into maybe a historical view, um, it's just a gold mine of use cases from almost every possible perspective because you've got partners in there, you've got product managers of HubSpot, looking for feedback, responding to feedback. You've got end users from from industrial manufacturing to SaaS to financial, you know, and you've got clearly like different levels of HubSpot expertise. So it's a great reminder because I think right now, especially in the LinkedIn echo chamber, we take a little bit of HubSpot for granted at times. And when you see, some of the questions that get asked in a community like this, it should be a good reminder that, you know, some people are brand spanking new to this platform, brand new to the concept of CRM or marketing automation. And while you have, you know, custom coded workflows being shared in one channel, you might have like, how do I set up an email list in another channel, right?
I mean, that's very true. And I think especially for a lot of us who are either with a partner or we've been using HubSpot for quite a while, it's easy to forget that at one point we didn't know how to build a workflow. And so, especially when you have someone that's newer to the software coming in and joining the community, I love seeing those really fundamental questions. But then on the flip side of that, you have people who are experienced who ask for different perspectives, especially because if you are experienced but you don't work for a partner, maybe you don't have internal resources and people that can act as a sounding board for advice. And so it's really, really awesome when you see something that is just someone looking for a third party point of view, an unbiased perspective of how would you do this? And I love seeing the community help one another with that.
Right. Yeah, me too. Me too. Um, so take us back to when you got when you first caught wind of it. You said you were feeling alone and looking for some help. What was it like back then?
Yeah. So this goes back about a year. And just in case anyone doesn't know, I am not the guy who started uh, Sprocketeer. That credit goes to Matt Bolian, Brendan Tollison, the guys over at Rev Partners. They originally started the community as a means to allow it to do exactly what it's doing today, which is just helping admin help one another. But about a year ago, I was looking to transition from being an admin with a startup toward joining the ecosystem with a partner. And I knew a lot about Sales Hub, but I also knew that there was a lot about HubSpot that I didn't know. And so somebody had suggested joining the Sprocketeer community. And I remember Googling it and I didn't see any info. And I went to their LinkedIn page and I didn't see any info. And it took me forever just to find the link to their Discord. And then I got really confused because I was like, why is this in Discord? Um, but I managed to join, was able to meet a lot of people who were very cool, but I had no idea who anybody was because for those who don't recall, back when we were on Discord, everybody was an anonymous username. And so it was very neat though, the concept of everyone who was available helping each other for no credit, right? Because we didn't know who each other was. So, you had drop down select and a handful of other people where we only knew usernames. But I was able to come in and just ask questions and speed up that learning curve because whereas a lot of, I think people learn through trial and error, I was definitely excited to just leverage the community and ask questions and get involved. And that was really just how I came in and became passionate about it. I'm a product of the experience, I suppose.
Right. Right. Um, did you ever get to talk to those guys and understand why they chose, Discord to get it started?
Yeah, it was a combination of factors. One was the fact that I don't think there's anybody who doesn't know Slack is owned by Salesforce, and so I know that
Uh,
played a
yeah.
part of the decision making. Um, and then I think it was just a component of, well, if we do Slack, we may end up wanting to pay for it and what would that look like? And there were just a lot of decisions that went with potentially starting in Slack. And so I think at the time it just made sense like, well, let's start with Discord, let's launch the community, let's see what it becomes. And, when they were starting out, it was an idea. So I don't think anybody would have necessarily anticipated, oh, we'll get 500 users, 1,500 users and grow necessarily to the point that we are. So obviously, as we grow and scale, we want to continue to make the experience better. But at the time, it seemed like a great decision.
Right. Yep. Always. It's so easy to hold back for getting the ducks in a row. So good to see, and knowing Matt, of all people, like he's not waiting for any ducks in any rows. So good to see it get started. Um, am I right in recalling that October timeframe last year is when the switch happened to Slack?
Yeah, it was. I think it was just after inbound. Um, when we were leading up to inbound, I was asking a lot of community members what their opinion would be on making the switch. And just after inbound, pulled the trigger with just making the Slack account and inviting a couple of members and really just collecting feedback. So at first it was, inviting the 5 to 10 people who were in Discord and asking them, hey, soft transition, you can use Discord, you can use Slack, give me your experience, let me know what you prefer. And overwhelmingly everyone was leaning towards Slack. So um, there was a point, an inflection point where we invited Kyle Jepson into Slack and he made a post and from there, it quickly went from 5 to 40 to 500 plus members, and I mean we've been growing consistently ever since.
Yeah, I remember tracking that post down so I could use the link to join. Um, so, and for those who are aware, uh, Kyle is as a HubSpot brand evangelist, one of the most well-known faces, I'd say, doing, HubSpot tips and tricks. And he's found something special, I think, in this admin hug that he started up and runs weekly. And I think is over like 4 or 5,000, on the list. But sometimes, 500, 600 people, on a 1 hour webinar, um, which is probably far from a webinar, and more of just people having fun in HubSpot, most of the time. And using that as a mechanism to, kind of build Sprocketeer has, I think, obviously has played a crucial role. And one thing he does is he kind of shares it at the beginning of every episode. And I want to do something similar here, where we just, kind of show people what the Slack looks like, um, and what they can expect if they want to check it out.
Yeah, and I think that it is such a special thing to have a community of people that are not only willing to help one another, but we learn both through giving advice and through our mistakes that have been made. And so one of my favorite channels is the Oops channel. Um, because sometimes you turn on a workflow and it breaks something, or sometimes you build something and it messes other things up, and um, just having a community of people that can find humor in their mistakes and understand one another in ways that people outside of our community might not. I just think that's a really special thing.
Yeah, because there's nothing worse than like, making an oops like that, and then just having to sit with it and not be able to talk about it with anybody. Right. So one of the many channels that we have here, um, before we dig in, I've got some ideas on channels to hit. Is there any that have surprised you as far as, activity or anything like that?
I wouldn't say any that have surprised me. there's definitely the ones that I am least familiar with, which may just speak to the lack of technical expertise. But um, we have there's the Marketing Hub. Obviously, is a popular channel, but the Commerce Hub is one of the newer ones. Originally, it was I think that one was no, we renamed CMS Hub to Content Hub, and then we added Commerce Hub. But the developers one is the one that always throws me for a loop, just because I do not know code. I know you can write code with ChatGPT and stuff, and I could probably do that, and I still wouldn't know what to do with it. So I definitely rely on other people for their technical expertise, and that's where having the operations hub, the developers channel, those two are the ones that we'll say I have the least experience with directly.
Yeah, and I think that was definitely a flag for me, in that, like a green flag, in that, oh man, this is how valuable and like how open people are to helping people. When you see like code to do complex things, or sometimes simple things, just making simple things easier, when you see that being shared, like, uh, and I haven't seen anybody, like just have like a day long thread, like, oh, build all this stuff for me, right? It's just like, hey, here's a question, and somebody's sharing code. And it's like, that's the kind of stuff that might cost a lot of money in other avenues. Um, so it's super interesting that, there's that level of sharing and advice, and, some of this exists in the dev community, like the HubSpot, um, you know, uh, website community, and the main community, which has been interesting for me, because I know that a lot of people, a lot of partners that built personal brands, like they're like the top commenters, and on the HubSpot community. But for some reason, I haven't. It's like not a good way for me to engage, so I haven't really looked for stuff there. And I really enjoy the conversational style. And I think, just even if you don't get answers right away, just like the prospect that you might get an answer right away, right, is super awesome when I think about the Slack and see people interacting.
Yeah, and especially with how valuable, I mean, as a HubSpot admin, your time is valuable. Salary and dollars and numbers aside, right? Like your time is best spent figuring out solutions to problems. And so if you're sitting there for 2.5 hours spinning your wheels trying to figure something out versus you drop a question in Slack, you work on something else for 2 hours, and then you come back and you have an answer to your question. There's so much value in that just from an economic perspective. And so, I mean, the fact that you could go into pretty much any of those channels, I know yours are grayed out because you're active in all of them regularly, but if you go 24 hours, you're going to see questions popping up in every single channel, and that's just because of how active and willing the community is to help one another. And again, I mean, that's just such a special thing to see.
Yeah, for sure. On that note, like even I've recently, as it grows, uh, you take a couple days off, and you see all the white channels. Do you have any recommendations for people joining, and like kind of not to get overwhelmed, or like how they should, maybe start to participate? Because it's very easy to, and that's where I'll just remind, like, the expertise level is the entire range. Don't assume anybody knows any answers. And so if you do, right, just don't hesitate to, um, you know, share an answer, or ask questions if you're not clear. Because I think, that's where the community as a whole, that conversational interaction, I've seen countless times, just like, the person posts a question, it's not clear. And then through the course of the conversation, it's like, oh, you actually, want this. And um, so, like, what would be your advice to somebody joining right now and they see, all these chats lit up, all these
Yeah.
channels?
Two suggestions. One, mute the channels that are not super helpful for you if they become noise. So for me, if we just go back to the operations hub one or the chat developers and engineers, like those are channels that I will check into, but I know that I'm probably not able to contribute to them most of the time. So although I check it, I typically have it muted just because um, otherwise I just see the notification pop up every time and then it can be overwhelming. So that's the first thing is leverage the fact that you can mute the channels that become too much. But the other one is looking at the community from the understanding that we're all trying to help one another. And this is, I think, the reason that it helped me shorten my curve just for learning how to be a good HubSpot admin because of the fact that um, you know, again, it's no secret, but most of us are working directly with executives, owners, leadership of various companies. And if you don't feel comfortable asking a question or answering a question in the community, how are you going to have that conversation with an executive? And so when I started thinking about things through that mindset, it helped me to reframe, oh, well, I don't want to be afraid to ask this question because if I can't ask it here, well, then where is a safe space? Or on the flip side, if somebody else asks a question, I would just pretend, well, what if that was my executive asking me about life cycle stages? And what answer would I give to them? So, you don't want to answer something if you are totally taking a shot in the dark and you have no idea and, you don't want to make that a source of truth, right? But again, we're all here to help each other. And so if you're not totally sure, but you want to contribute, just say that hey, I'm not super familiar with life cycle stages. Based on what I've heard, I would probably suggest doing this. I open the conversation for anybody else that wants to contribute. Nobody's going to get mad at you if you don't have a definitive answer. But at the same time, oftentimes in HubSpot, there's more than one right way to do things. And so oftentimes it's really a matter of perspective, not just getting a singular, this is the right answer.
Yeah, and I think especially as HubSpot grows into customer platform and all these hubs, come out in the product development, uh, we're constantly sharing, betas and just new things that we're seeing, that we're not expecting, or the random stuff that pops up just to see like, hey, is this just me, or is everybody else seeing this? And just having that kind of sounding board, because it's rare. It's super rare for me to see any post in any channel go without at least some kind of like emoji, response, right? And that's what's really cool, because that's when, like, and that's why I think it's special in terms of like, this is so HubSpot focused, right? It's unusual for a community, at least in my experience, that is so, focused on a specific tool or a specific product, to be so active in like the two-way activity, right? Where the sounding board is always there to respond in some way. And I think that's, really special.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. And I think it's such a unique thing um, where Sprocketeer is reflective of HubSpot's values. So HubSpot was built by community for community, and that's something that they talk about and preach often. And the fact that you have HubSpotters, right? We've got Kyle Jepson, but also Caleb King. We've got numerous product managers in there, right? So we have actual HubSpotters in the community helping us users. And that's not something that you see with most softwares, most platforms, or most companies. So it's a really, really special, really unique place that both the end user and the creator, if you will, are coming together.
Yeah. And like, it's not just a high and buy either, right? It's like, yesterday, um, I forget his name, unfortunately, right now. Um, let's see if I can find it here. Uh, it's in the last sort of Content Hub, of course, where I like to hang out. Um, and Ankur Gupta, the PM of memberships, right,
Hmm.
responds to this long thread where we've been going back and forth about client portals and stuff like that. And he's like, loving the feedback. If you want to chat, here's my meeting link, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's just a different level of access. And this is another channel you can get to it. But that continues to astound me from the HubSpot perspective of how, like, if there's really anything at all I can count on, it's that they're going to be open to feedback and open to listening. It doesn't mean they're going to act on it right away or agree, but just having that, like, being heard from the customer perspective, no matter what level of user you are, no matter if you're partner or end user, whatever, it's there's just something that it's just an added element that you don't find in a lot of places.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with that fully. And ultimately, I think that Sprocketeer serves two functions. It helps HubSpot learn about what the community thinks, what our problems are, what we're talking about. I mean, even if certain people are not commenting regularly, I'm sure there's a lot of people who are watching what's happening in the threads. And then it serves the obvious function, which is allowing us users to actually help one another. Um, but I mean, there's also the implicit happening, which is simply the people who are in the threads most common becoming closer as a community. And so, it's hard to quantify a feeling, but the end goal, if we fast forward 6 months from now, right, and everybody's gone to inbound and come back from inbound, and the end goal of the emotion behind this is that I want people to feel connected. Because I remember going to inbound and having been to a few conferences where you can be in a sea of people and still feel so alone. And so
Yes.
if Sprocketeer acts as a bridge that allows people to connect in the lead up to inbound, and then we can all be there and talk about HubSpot, not talk about HubSpot, whatever we want to connect about, but feel like I know this person, that would be a huge win.
Yeah, I think so. And uh, we'll wrap up soon. I do want to get some maybe roadmap stuff out of you, but before that, I want to just shout out Blue Trail. Um, they have been an awesome provider of this kind of coffee chat, like, you know, uh, automated meetup invitations that go out every week. Like, if you're part of this coffee club channel, and um, while I'd say I'm probably one of the more active people in the community as a whole, that mechanism that can kind of facilitate networking, right? Um, has been awesome, right? Being able to meet people and like kind of confirm that yes, it's not just I'm seeing people post about different stuff. It's just an unbelievable way to meet people, talk to people, understand how they're using HubSpot, their history with HubSpot. And this is like international too, um, people from India, Asia, uh, met people from Europe, South America. Um, don't think I've talked to anybody from Africa yet, but I know there's some people in there, from Africa. So it's a cool deal, and definitely appreciate Blue Trail and what they're providing for the community.
Yeah, I mean, huge, huge shout out to them. When we originally were launching the coffee chat, I found an app. They gave us a free trial, and I don't know, after 2 or 3 weeks, when it was going to convert to a paid membership, Glue Trail stepped in and essentially said, "Hey, we'll sponsor this. We'll give it to the community. We know our app can do it better," and they did. So the Sprocketeer community, is just speaking on behalf of everyone, is really appreciative of having access to their service.
For sure. Um, what else are you hoping to do with this community?
Yeah, it's a great question. Um, where I want to practice what I preach. In terms of one thing that I am often to tell maybe newer HubSpot admin or executives that we're talking about, like, how do we grow the business? There's a difference between saying you're going to do something and doing it. But I also don't want to speak too heavily on things that we aren't yet fully locked in on. So, speaking somewhat vaguely, what I can say is that I have been working with Kyle and with Deanna and having conversations about ways to increase engagement at the community. I know that inbound is obviously the highlight of the year for HubSpot admin and HubSpotters. And so I'm exploring ways to provide similar types of value year round, or above and beyond just inbound being like that one time a year where everybody gets together. So I don't know what this is going to look like. I'm definitely not saying like, oh, we have in-person events coming up. That's not what I'm implying at all. But I want to develop ways to allow HubSpotters to be more connected in larger ways more regularly. So we've been floating around. Obviously, we have the hugs that we already encourage and take place. There are people who are encouraged to meet locally, but how do we take some of these things that right now happen on occasion or happen digitally, and how do we expand on what's currently being seen?
Yeah.
Answers are to be decided, but
Yeah.
those are the conversations taking place.
Awesome. Well, we always know there's something brewing in the background in terms of HubSpot and growth and all that stuff. So thank you for sharing what you could there. Um, and that said, like, if you got good ideas in terms of how to accomplish, online, bringing online communities, offline and in person to some extent, come on in and share. I know there's a lot of energy that wants to go towards that, but isn't quite sure how to best accomplish it. Um, but bright minds are thinking about it and talking about it. That's for sure.
If if there's any group of people that can figure out how to accomplish something, it's our group of Sprocketeers. And the thing that I will wrap with is this: just as HubSpot is built for community, so is Sprocketeer. We're not going to execute every idea that we get. But I do encourage all of our members, if you have ways that you think we can grow the community or ways that we can increase engagement or just ideas for the community as a whole, please send them my way. Always happy to have a conversation, see what we can do. And like I said, my goal is just to continue to bring people together and to connect everyone more.
Yes, well said. And if you are a Sprocketeer watching this, you click on Sprocketeer dropdown, invite people to Sprocketeer, and that gives you a copy invite link option. Uh, Invites links last for 30 days. So you might need to refresh it every now and then. But that is, if you're talking to anybody that's in HubSpot land and they're not in the community, um, that's how you get them in there. So don't hesitate.
Fun fact, on mobile it's opposite. So on your phone it's at the bottom of your Slack app. At least for Android, you have to scroll down and click, I think, invite team member, and then it'll generate that link.
There you go. We're mobile friendly here, right?
We are adapting with the times, and just so grateful to be a member of the community, to be able to represent the community. Um, Grateful for the growth we've had, and I'm excited for the growth that's yet to come.
Awesome. Well, it was wonderful talking about this. I've been wanting to talk about this for a while. and just gotten so much value from the community. And I wanted to thank you for kind of holding it down, holding it together right now. Thanks to Kyle and Deanna for the work they do week in and week out. Not an easy task, but a fun one, I'm sure, doing the admin hug, and just creating this overall like kind of ecosystem within the ecosystem of you know super users and super admins. Just talking about HubSpot, sharing about HubSpot, and you know helping each other grow.
That's it. No matter what partner you work with, or if you're working with an independent company, there's a place for you in the Sprocketeer community, and there's a massive group of people who are looking to help and to be involved.
Couldn't agree more. Thanks so much, for joining us today, Cameron. Um, and as you see Sprocketeer, and as you get in there, I invite everybody to find that opportunity and let's grow. Have a great day, everybody.
Build daily, Sprocket on.
Yeah.